So this is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and I am Jon Croft, and Rebecca's here too.
Hi.
Hi, Rebecca. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? What
I'm
have
doing
you
well too.
doing well too? That's good. So what media experiences have
Oh,
you had this week?
media experiences. I like that.
Me too.
I've had some pretty good ones, not a lot. Um, I was really hoping to see the Matt Walsh movie coming out tonight, but of course we're doing this. So,
Yeah.
but that one's called Am I Racist? Which by the way, I realized you know how I wrote the monthly address today for Media Moses. Um, it's I put in there the little meme for Jesus saying, I saw that, the I saw that meme
hmm
to explain my peaking project idea. And I realized it looks like Matt Walsh in his little promo, like on the poster where he's like half of his face is coming out, and then like he has
Oh.
like the longer hair, like the Jesus hair. It almost looked like Matt Walsh is saying, I saw that.
Oh.
I thought that was funny.
That is funny.
You've seen that meme, right?
hmm And there's a t-shirt. I saw Jonathan Rumi wearing the t-shirt that said that.
Nice.
Said, I
I
saw
can
that.
actually share it. I can actually share it. Here we go. Here it is. Isn't that great?
Yep.
And he's the Orthodox one too. So he's the Orthodox Jesus, which gives him that particular stare, you know?
The kind of like peaceful, blissed out stare.
Yes, but the one that many people feel guilty by. I think that Orthodox people say, if you can look at that stare without feeling guilty, you're doing pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Of course, I've never really felt guilty at Jesus' stare. He's
Yeah, I think that's the point, to not feel guilty at his stare.
he's yeah, which the I saw that meme is perfect for. It's just the whole idea is perfect.
Yes,
You're
it is.
seeing you're seeing what's inside of yourself. Are you seeing joy or are you seeing terror? He saw what you did.
hmm
Or as I saw how cute and how funny you are. It's you just project onto him your own, you know, with the state of
Yeah,
your inner self.
yeah.
So that's quite beautiful.
I love it.
Um, but yeah, I've been having a discussion. I'll share this. Been having a discussion with an Orthodox guy from Russia on X and another Assemblies of God person, artist on X. And I guess I still kind of identify with the Assemblies of God as my denomination because I grew up there. So when I learned that she was AG, I was like, yep, yep, we understand each other.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess you were asking what kind of media. Well, that's another example. I was on X this week having a discussion about Protestantism and Orthodoxy, and we don't admit the Romans into our group. No, it's, it's just us guys, um, us Eastern thinkers and people who are no longer Western. Does that make us Eastern? No, I just means we don't like Romans.
Wow. No longer Western. That's interesting.
No longer Western. Universal.
Universal.
Isn't that the idea anyway with the word Catholic, the original word meaning of the word Catholic? Um, it's
Oh.
that it's the universal church, and so therefore anyone who claims that name, oh well, they're the one true church.
hmm
Um, but
That's
really
right.
the concept is universal, isn't it? So meaning not West, not East, universal.
Yeah.
So neither one of the old churches can claim it because
Yeah.
they're both one side of the sphere. They're not the entire thing. I've always felt that I know we're a little off topic, but I've always felt that there's numerous places in the Bible where Jesus talks about the churches, the churches in Ephesus, the churches of Smyrna, the the seven lampstands, right?
Yeah.
In Revelation, you
Yeah.
know. Then there's the churches that the apostles
Mhm.
talk about, you know.
Yeah.
And there's always this understanding that there's multiple churches. And so this idea that there's one true church is kind of hu very hubristic. A lot of hubris there, which which as a Protestant, of course, you're seeing the hubris of so many other churches. And this was the Reformation. That's what the Reformation was. So it's just funny that, you know, you're seeing in scripture all of these churches always being talked about. And they're different kinds of churches. They're different.
Yeah.
They're not only in different places, they represent different kinds of values, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that there's a church that has enough hubris to say, no, we're the only church, only Smyrna. It it tells you what their values are, right? They already reveal their values in that statement. So, when you read Revelation, you're like, I wonder which church the Greek Orthodox Church is. Are
Mm.
they Thyatira? Are they, what are they? I wonder which church the Romans are.
Mm.
Are they Smyrna or whatever?
Yeah.
And I wonder which church the Baptists are, and the Coptic Christians, and the Oriental Orthodox, and
Mm.
the Pentecostals, and so I had recently been watching some videos on the seven churches, the seven golden lampstands, and I was
Yeah.
trying to make that connection, like which ones of these denominations, which the old church doesn't like to call themselves denominations, they're too above these terms. These terms are, oh, they hurt them. The
Mm.
term denomination just hurts their feelings.
Mm.
So they have to be called sects. We're a sect. There's many sects of the church. These
Yeah.
terms really hurt their feelings. So they don't
Yeah.
like them. And so they have to correct you. But it does make you wonder which church, is it Laodicea? Oh, God forbid there's Laodicea. But like it's one of these churches. And so the point of that whole thing is that Jesus has a message for each one of us,
Yeah.
right? And some of us are doing well, and some of us are not doing so well. All of us are not doing something right, but we're getting something else correct, right? And so it's like we like to kind of focus on the other church and be like, oh, they're getting that wrong, but we're not noticing how we're missing something.
Mm-hmm.
We're often not noticing how we're correct about something. Maybe we're down on ourselves too much,
Mm-hmm.
which Protestants, we can be very down on ourselves, right? It's a different kind of attitude, and it can go into extremes where the Eastern Church maybe and the Western Church Rome can be very into themselves, very like we are the greatest thing ever. We don't ever make mistakes.
Mm.
Everything's perfect. Just be quiet, right? Don't talk against us. But Protestants are the other way around. We're like, God forbid, I don't want to be like, thank you, or I'm a sinner, Lord, help me. Like we're very like
Mm-hmm.
we're not into ourselves. Like we could change our denomination, fairly easily. And many people think that that's a weakness. Um, but we don't have the hubris to think that we should never change our denomination.
Yeah.
So there's an instinctive in Protestantism, there's this just very deeply seated, like how Martin Luther was asking the church to change, but he never wanted to leave the Roman church. He was very deeply penitent towards the church.
Yeah.
So this kind of attitude has worked its way into the Protestant churches in many ways. Um, we a lot of the reason a lot of people don't even realize it, but a lot of the reason we don't have imagery in the church and we have it very bare, it's not because we're boring people and we don't like art. It's because a lot of us consider it egotistical, right? To even have the hubris to depict God in any way. Like we don't even have the desire to compete with God's creation. Do you know what I mean? In that kind of in the beauty that Jesus created, we don't even have the desire. So there's a problem there, but there's also something good there, right? So you have to look at it. It depends on how you look at it. And if you're looking at it to tear someone down, you'll find a lot of stuff. But if you're looking there to lift someone up, you'll also find a lot of reasons why the Protestant church is the original church, right? Romans Romans can't see this because to them their man is Peter. This means they're the original, but that doesn't really hold historical accuracy to it. You know what does? Actually listening to the Bible and doing what the apostles say. That's what holds um, validity to it. So if what's the story in the Bible that talks about a faithful servant? Since
Mhm.
we read the Bible, we know these things. A faithful servant is not the man who says, I follow God, who has all these applauds, right? Who's been approved by everybody, who's done everything right, but then he doesn't obey God. Is that the faithful servant? So that lesson is there to teach us that it's not about what you say. It's not about the badge you've got that says, "Oh, I have honor," right? It's not about the human applause you get, right? It's about obeying God. That's really what an obedient servant is. So the church has traditions, but do they follow the traditions of the apostles, which is the Bible? That's the traditions of the apostles. So if you're going to be an apostolic church with actual apostolic succession that matters, it comes through obedience, not through claims of authority. It comes through actual obedience to God. Do we not believe God exists and he can see what we do now? Or do we believe that this is only carried through because Jesus died, didn't raise again? Now his spirit is carried through many, many, many people through thousands of years, which is why apostolic succession matters. It doesn't matter in the way they say if you believe in the spirit, right? The spirit, it comes through obedience. It doesn't come through claims. Claims mean you have to check your apostolic. Check it. Check all the hereditary lines. Check that you got signed off by this bishop or whatever. Earthly human acclaim, right? Not obedience. So it's very interesting and important to study what the actual apostles said. And I'm not here to actually even say the Roman church or the Orthodox church is not actually Orthodox, right? I'm here to say that Protestants don't have the same value system as so many of those guys because we're looking at it differently. We're looking at like obedience to God matters. We're looking at like the words of God matters more than the words of St. Basil, you know? And we love the Theotokos, but it doesn't mean we love her more than God. So we make a distinction, right? So those who, what did Jesus say? Jesus, right? The man, the God. What does he say? Who is my mother and my brothers? Those who do the will of my Father in heaven. He's saying that to his mother, Mary, to his brothers. So shouldn't we also have that same value system and set above our earthly family, our heavenly family? So those who actually obey God are in the church, right? Not those who just claim to be in the church or say, I will obey God. Those aren't the faithful servants. So this is why, even though I love, you know me, I love a lot of doctrine from the Eastern Orthodox. But this is why I still call myself a Protestant, because it's about understanding that reform in the body of Christ is a necessity. Why? Because you who claim to be in the body of Christ but do not obey Christ are not in the body of Christ, really. You claim you are, but if you're not willing to reform yourself, reform your doctrine, reform your behavior, sorry, but you shouldn't even be allowed in the church. So I know I already got off onto a heavy topic, but I just wanted to get it out of the way. I'll just get it out of the way and then we'll move on.
Is that what you've been experiencing this
That's what
week?
I've been experiencing this week. That's the media stuff I've been experiencing. And it's true too, because sometimes I watch doctrine videos about this stuff. It's always fun. But how about you, Rebecca? What kind of media experiences have you been having this week?
Okay, well, I thought you were going to pick this, but I figured I would just go for it anyways. We
Oh
should
man,
probably just call this the George McDonald podcast.
might as well. He's
So
great.
we've been reading The Princess and the Goblin as a family story. And
Yes,
um
beautiful stuff.
yeah, this is three of his fairy tales or four of them, I'm not sure. And it's so good. Like the characters are written with such wisdom and grace
Mm,
and gentleness. It's a fairy tale, so there's things going on that are just, fantasy,
right.
but it's written in a way that really draws you in. It's very beautiful. It's very dreamlike, and you're rooting for the characters. It feels like Lord of the Rings, where you really want these guys to do it.
Hmm.
You just behind them
Right.
and you believe in them, and they have this lovely imagery of this little girl. She's a princess, of course, because a fairy tale has to have a princess, and she discovers accidentally this staircase that goes up and up and up and up in her house. I mean, how amazing is that?
Mm.
And there's this beautiful old grandma in there who is very mysterious, but very warm and loving, and winds up helping her and being her, just being her guide,
Kind
basically.
of like a fairy godmother, but more
Oh, yeah.
intimate and sweet and familial.
Yeah.
And also one great thing about McDonald is he'll have characters like this that you don't know if they're magical or not. They're kind of
Hmm.
like in this in-between place
Yeah.
between like, what is she going to do next? Because it could be weird.
Yeah.
And I love this person. They're just so beautiful and sweet, you know?
Yeah.
And some characters like the North Wind are obviously magical, and other
Mm-hmm.
characters like this one are like you don't really quite know if she's really magical or not, but you kind of suspect, and you realize, yeah, she's magical. She's just not overtly magical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she kind of not hides it, but she's kind of like the great thing about this particular story in comparison to a lot of his others is that this story, the theme of this story is about believing
Mm.
right? When someone makes audacious claims that sound too crazy or weird, it's about believing them, even, and being willing to believe as a child might, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of like, I don't want to call it easy believism, but it's like, because that's a different topic, really. But it's kind of like being willing to go down this little rabbit hole with this child, or
Yeah.
being, that kind of faith, and when you're not willing to believe, which Curdy makes a mistake one time, and he's not willing to believe one time. He's a little older than Irene. So he's a little more worldly wise in a way, right?
Hmm.
And kids that age will stop believing a lot of childlike things, which I think Curdy's about 12 or something.
Hmm.
And Irene's maybe six, I'm guessing,
I think they said she was 5. Yeah.
5 or 6. Five seems so young though. Um, but I suppose it's possible. I think back then they raised the kids quick.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and she's a princess, so she's supposed to be educated well, right? But I think it's a great way to kind of like reveal that theme in the story when it's about how you relate to the grandmother and whether or not she's real or whether or not she can actually do these things. And so that believing that is the great thing about it is I don't want to reveal too much of the story, but it's like when you are willing to believe in her, then it's like she's revealed to you. But when
Yeah.
you're not willing to believe, it's like she hides from you.
Yeah.
And even you can't even find her room. Like you can't
Hmm.
even see the things in that room that other people see because you're not willing to believe it.
Yeah.
So it really has to do with the will of your heart, whether or not you're willing to believe something or not. And then when you're willing to, it's like where that world opens up to you, right? And this is very much how belief in God is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what he's teaching, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, believe to see.
Right.
That's a good one that I always like to think of. And, Jesus says, the work of God is that you believe in the Son he has sent.
Yeah.
Um, that's in the Gospel of John. I think it's chapter 5
Mm.
or 7. I don't remember.
That's just so good.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's what I've been reading. I could talk about music too.
what
That
kind of
I
music do you want to talk about?
Well, we found this great the YouTube algorithm just kind of randomly
Mm.
recommended to me. It just said an indie playlist, and I clicked on it and it was called Keep Me, and it turns out that it's not an indie playlist, it's a Christian indie guy,
Oh,
and
that's
all the
right.
music is all the music is his. And it's called his name is Cross Gray, or his band's name is Cross Gray, I'm not sure. And it's called Keep Me.
Yeah, it's
And
like a little playlist he made. It's a really great idea to just make
yeah,
a playlist with your own music instead of just like calling it an album or whatever. Because I
yeah.
think I think albums in some ways are kind of an outdated concept. It's really about playlists, isn't it?
Oh, that's not working.
It is kind of hard to see.
Anyways, you
I
can
think it
find
was
it
upside down too.
backwards.
Yeah, or no, upside down. Oh, no, that was right side up, but it's just too hard to make out.
Yeah, so
But
Cross Gray, Keep Me, that's what it's called.
it's
Very
great.
good stuff.
Yeah, we've been enjoying him, I think, for longer than a week, maybe a few weeks now, haven't we?
Yeah. It's nice. He does a cover of Come Now, Fonts of Every Blessing. He does a cover of that, which
Cool.
is a really good old hymn. And then the rest of the music seems to be his own. And I love lyrics, but I can't always hear his lyrics. But, occasionally you pick up a word here and there, which sometimes makes it more dreamy because then you can kind of imagine what he's saying. Um,
Yeah.
put in your own kind of worship lyrics to go with it.
Right. I
But
always thought
it's
that was
good.
funny. That kind of concept of, I remember back in the day when Christians would get upset when they couldn't tell what the lyrics were saying, they'd be like, "Ah, this is you got to provide a lyric sheet, or I don't know what they're saying. It could be something evil." You know, I always thought that was kind of a funny debate. You know,
Yeah, there are a lot of funny debates.
you can stand on either side of that debate and win. Like it's just, you know what I mean? Like it's art. Enjoy the art. You
Hmm
don't trust this guy? Why do you not trust them? They're a Christian. And then the other side is just like, haven't you seen that there's some bad lyrics that could make it to the, even if you're a Christian, you never know. And I don't, and so it's like, who are these people? Do I really trust them? And you teach kids not to trust everybody. And
Yeah.
that's that's true. So it's like, why not just provide a lyric sheet? Okay, I'll just provide a lyric sheet. Sheesh, make you feel better.
Hmm.
And then the great thing about that is the artists that they provide the lyric sheet anyway, but then half their lyrics are like nonsensical, and you're just like, what is he saying? I don't know, but it doesn't sound bad, so whatever. And then you're like, I like that guy. He's an artist. He just puts out weird stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, as long as it's not like bad, right? It's like Christian comedians, right? It's like as long as you're not like saying bad language, it's like
Yeah.
go for it. Like say some kind of weird concept. I don't care. Talk about pregnancy or childbirth or anything weird, like stuff that some people squirm at, but it's like, no, this is life. This is what life's about. Like
Yeah.
artists are supposed to talk about the weird stuff in life, you know? And it's
Yeah.
always those church ladies in the back who are like wagging their finger that you're like, okay, all right, calm down. It's going to be fine. Just turn your hearing aid off. Like you'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
it's
sometimes what
true.
the church needs. Just like calm down.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really is true. When you're just really aware of being, in God and, when you're living life with the Holy Spirit, you can experience God
Mm-hmm.
wherever you are because you're with him and he's with you and you know it. So
Mm.
you can, you
Yes.
know, wherever you are, you can be worshiping. Wherever you are, you can be having church because you are the church.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just fellowshipping,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, those are good media experiences. I like this new segment we're doing. This is good.
Yeah, me too.
Media experiences. We'll just get them out of the way, just get them out of the way.
Yeah.
Get all my doctrinal stuff out of the way.
I like that you mentioned doctrine as media. I was going to, well, I probably shouldn't move my camera, but there's this great company called Dwell, and they encourage people to
Mhm.
memorize scripture. And they
Cool.
send you in the mail, they send you a Bible verse, like a car. It's not like it's cool, but they send you like a Bible verse with like a little, you know, bit of a couple paragraphs about the Bible verse, and then a temporary tattoo,
Oh, that's right. That's really
and
cool.
and then a keychain. And what it is it uses the first letter
The first
memorization
letter
method.
method. That's right. That's a great method for
Yeah,
memorizing
so
scripture, right?
yeah. So it'll be the first letter of each word in the verse. And
Mm-hmm.
so if doctrine can be media,
It can. It
I've been
is.
enjoying I've been enjoying Isaiah 26 verse 3, which is
Can you say it from memory?
I think so. Um you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you.
Mm.
So I've been
And
enjoying that verse.
mhm. Yeah, steadfast. Yeah. It's good to be able to be in the spirit of the Lord and just have confidence in him,
Yeah.
you know. Because we mess up, don't we? We mess
Yeah.
up and then we feel silly. And then the Lord is like, it's okay.
Yeah. He's
Not a
like,
big deal.
I
Calm
saw
down.
that,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's the I saw that, except it's the okay part of it.
Yeah.
You're funny. I find you funny. Like, thanks, I think.
Mhm.
But one the thing we're talking about today is the lesson of the blocked guitar. Now, I said lesson because that's really what it is, but it was actually a dream I had.
Oh,
This is a
wow.
totally like literally last night I had a dream that when I woke up I called it the blocked guitar.
Mm.
And but before I talk about that, there was a some stuff where I was going to talk about here called, let's see if I can go to it. Oh yeah, I should share it. I'm so silly. Um,
I like it when you share stuff.
oh good. I'm glad. I'm glad. You can see what I'm seeing, right?
Hmm.
So I talk about this is my Media Moses monthly address I just put out today for only internal subscribers. It's not for just the public or whatever. But I talk about the Thin Days and which is the movie we're developing right now. And I say is I say Thin Days is about giving hope to an artistic group of Christians who may not know that they too can make films like this. They have permission. And additionally, they will be seen and heard, not ignored. So we are not dissuaded from this goal of making the film. Instead, this vision is only growing more robust as we move forward. And then I say, wait, is this the story of the film? No, this is the outer theme for the film, not the inner theme. This means it's why we make the film for society, in order to affect society. It's not what the characters in the story are doing, i.e., the plot. This is the multifaceted use that art can have. So and then I say, this is why I try to have a log line for each film I work on, but I also have a thematic log line, which is the social value or the impact the film is meant to possess. So this is one of the things I've been working on is to improve my film projects. It's to have a thematic log line as well. So a log line is like a sentence or so, which quickly explains the plot of the film or what the film is about. And it's supposed to be the most relevant or the most high concept part of your story to bring people in, draw people in to see your story. So that's the log line. But the thematic logline, and I don't have a lot of experience doing this yet. This is just a concept I came up with maybe a month ago or something, a few weeks ago, is that you have an outer theme and an inner theme. Or the inner theme is the how the movie's actually constructed, right? It's like the plot of the film, the characters, the actors, all the script. It's literally the script and what the theme of the story is that you have in the script. But the outer theme is kind of like the purpose that the filmmaker has for why they're making the film, right? It's kind of like what they want to accomplish by making the film. And a lot of the reason that I wanted to start doing this is because I realized that when I was younger making films, I was making films basically to just get them sold. I wanted to get them sold. And so I had no social purpose. There was no purpose in making the film except to have a career in making film. It was just about me, right? And so I find that you have every story has a theme and a log line, but it's like it's secondary to the actual making of the film. Why? Because you're willing to change your script and your themes to suit the distributor or suit the studio or whoever wants to buy your film, right? So you have to be willing to do that to have a film career. And I realized that the more and more I did that, the more I didn't have any real purpose of making art behind it. And so these stories become very shallow in their depth.
Mm-hmm.
They become very about me, right? And they're not about some larger purpose in life. And so to me, good art is never that way. It's always about purpose, a larger purpose in life. It's trying to teach you something that the artist learned, or the artist is trying to learn something by making that art. And there's some sort of catharsis that the artist is getting. And in making that art, they reach this this point of understanding, or this willingness to learn at least comes through in their themes. And so I realized I needed to have both things. I needed to have kind of like the plot and all the story structure and all these things, right? Sure, of course, you have to have a script, but then you have to have this larger overriding purpose. Why am I making this film? Who am I making this film for as a result of that? Because when you're making you're making $1 million picture or whatever, $50 million picture, even who you're making the film for can change. That doesn't even matter. You're just making it for whoever will watch it, you know? And or you might set who you want to watch it over your script. Like, well, this audience won't like to hear these words, so I will change them to suit my audience, right? And so your audience could be the studio, or it could be the actual viewer, or it could be a lot of things. And so you realize eventually, at least I did, that my priorities are all off and I'm not doing it for the right reason, you know? And so I realized I have to have this outer theme, which is about society. It's about what society is supposed to get out of this story. And as a Christian, that becomes a little easier because I can attach Bible verses, I can attach scriptural significance to what I'm making. And it's not that this is unheard of in the faith-based world, but it was really important to me to realize, oh, if I'm going to be involved in making the kind of films I want to be making now, which are kind of faith-based, right? What kind of faith-based films do I want to make and why? And then that why question has real depth to it, and you're like, oh, I don't even actually want to just have a few Bible verses or whatever, or approach some issue like I read a book and then make a film, right? To me, that's not even enough. Why? Because I'm not just reiterating information to you, and I'm not giving you a little Bible study, and I'm not preaching you a sermon. I'm making a film. A film is art. It's meant to be art. So when you make art, the artist is going on a journey with you to learn something, right? And so I think you really have to work at learning something as an artist. And that journey, you could call it a pilgrimage of sorts. That journey is kind of your outer theme. It's like, what do I want to learn through making this film? You know? And so that's something I've been working on, that whole concept,
Yeah.
Um, but then we also come to the peaking project and the gig project. So we don't have to talk about the gig project because it's kind of like it's more about Media Moses stuff. But the Peking project, uh, I write here, the Peking project is like a man peeking around a corner saying, "I saw that." The Jesus meme doing that is very charming to me, so I like that one. It kind of sticks with me, and that's why I wrote that there. So let's talk about that. I say, but here's how it works. And I don't always like the word peaking project. I think it's kind of awkward a little bit, but I have another word for it called the iceberg project. And I'll just read this. I say, here's how it works. It's like hitting an iceberg. There's something there, and early adopters may see it or perceive it and wonder at the depths below the surface. While this is happening, the rest of society misses it, hits the iceberg, and gets taken to wondrous depths themselves, not knowing how they were taken in by such a small thing until it's too late. It's like they joined a cult and didn't even realize it. They are now true believers. That's the Peking Project. If you acknowledge it, I say, you can examine it from a safe distance. But if you tend to follow along with society, you may be destroyed by its magnificence. Like Star Wars, so many became little acolytes of the cult of Star Wars during the 80s. They didn't even know what hit them. Virtually nobody saw this phenomenon of sci fi or fantasy myth making for families early on. People were into gritty anti heroes like Clint Eastwood. Behind the curtain, however, Lucas had an entire world building project that just had to be unleashed upon the Titanic built in audience that we didn't even know existed before 1977. This is an idea I'm playing with for the future of my film projects. It's not about genre conventions the way people typically play with these types of success stories in Hollywood. It's about the depth of potential world building that lives within a consistent universe. It's about the underwater potential that destroys uh, Titanic built in audiences. It's not about how to make people little acolytes. It's about how to make projects with depth enough to fill people with marvelous wonder. So that's the Peking Project or the Iceberg Project. What do you think of that?
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of a different way of saying I just want to make films with world building in it that are as great as Star Wars or whatever. But what I tried to do is look at it on another level. So, and it's not about like whether this person is an acolyte and they are just falling in love with the project or if they're not a safe observer from a distance. That doesn't matter. To me, what matters more is like, am I making an iceberg, right? That's providing kind of like a hint, you
Hmm.
know, but there's a lot under the surface.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah, it's very much like yeah, drawing people in, and I like this idea of wonder and mystery. This is a lot of movies that people love have a lot of that wonder and mystery in them.
hmm
And um and they become the most lasting projects. Of course, Star Wars is a great example, but you've got like The Princess Bride and you've got um Indiana Jones and you've got these movies with a lot of like it's like that iceberg thing.
hmm
Like we're just giving you a peek into this beautiful world that's full of wonder. Maybe it's an ancient civilization, maybe it's another time where people acted differently and the rules were different. The rules of society were different. Um, but whatever it is, it's like, um, I don't know, almost like breadcrumbs, right? That like draws you in
Yes, yes.
and keeps you like wanting, wanting something more, wanting to find the gingerbread house, the candy house.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking of Hansel
The
and Gretel.
meaning, you're looking for that meaning behind it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And you're just excited by the possibility of meaning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, to me, this is the longing in our hearts that we all have for Christ, but it's in all of us, and we see it in films when there's just something there, and we're like, man, what was it about that movie that excited me? That was so interesting.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of this movie from I don't remember when it was from, early 2000s maybe, Sky Captain and the World of
Oh,
Tomorrow or
tomorrow.
something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then even like uh Rocket Man. I don't know, just thinking of like different movies like that where the theme itself is just so interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like they sit you down and school you. Like, here's the universe of Rocket Man. So now you're an expert. Now you know all the rules. They just give you a peek
Right.
into it.
Yeah.
But it's enough to make you fall in love with that movie and that world.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and they don't treat you like kind of an idiot, like, oh, I have to explain all this to you. Like you said,
Right.
I think you said that they don't really scold you on it. They just kind of like
Yeah.
they just lay it out like naturally, like
Yeah.
almost like you already know about it and
Hmm.
you just need to have the scenes laid out for you naturally and organically. Um, like not too much exposition, for example. Like
Yeah.
too much exposition is just like it's it's really kind of like it's not immersive enough because what you really are is self-aware of your story enough to say, "Oh, I have to explain this." But the problem is you're not hiding the fact that you're self-aware. You're making it very clear that you do not have the confidence in your audience to be able to understand what's happening. And so by explaining too much, you're you're um you're peeking behind the curtain, you're breaking the fourth wall in some way, right? Like
Yeah.
in a minor way, but it's even worse than actually breaking it overtly. You're breaking it in a way that's like I just don't have confidence in you guys. I need to explain it to you. And then you
Hmm.
end up becoming a bad filmmaker,
Hmm.
because you've ruined the continuity of your story, the forward thrust of your story,
Hmm.
you know. And so it's better just not to explain it and act as though this is normal. If you act as though this world is normal, then you live in the world
Yeah.
because that's how anyone living in that world would act.
Yeah.
So these kinds of things are really important with world building. And a lot of people break these rules. A lot of
Hmm.
people, you know. Um,
Well, Star Wars does. I mean, Star
yeah,
Wars spends the first, 3 minutes or whatever of the movie with the big long list of exposition telling us all the things
that's
that are
true.
going on. It is kind
That's
of
true.
necessary and we're all okay with it, but it's
Yeah.
definitely breaking the rules.
I think I think I think that tool that they used
Yeah, they did it well.
was was well executed.
Yeah.
And so I think that George Lucas probably recognized that he had to explain some, but how to do that in a non-clunky way, how to
Hmm.
do that without using exposition in the film, right? With
Hmm.
some character explaining things to you. There
Hmm.
was barely none of that. There was that moment when Obi-Wan explains some things about Darth Vader, but he does it in a way that's very cloaked, that's very mystical, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't do it in a way where you don't belong in that universe and he has to explain it to you like you don't belong in that universe.
Hmm.
He does it in a very kind of intimate way. And so he totally sells it. But that guy, Guinness, he sells that film. My
Mm.
goodness. He's a great actor. But So yeah, I mean, I think that's an important part of really good, especially sci-fi and fantasy. I mean,
Yeah.
world building is essential. But I think fairy tale, anything like fairy tale, I guess fairy tale is fantasy, right? But like fairy tales are so important to our modern understanding of sci-fi and fantasy that it bothers me that we only, I'm going to talk about George MacDonald again, but but it bothers me that people don't acknowledge him as like such a great fairy tale writer. I was even on the I was on the Hillsdale College website because I was thinking of buying you got the George MacDonald book. That's great. So true. He's peaking. The book is peaking.
Yeah.
Uh, I was on the Hillsdale College website because they have this course on Dante's Divine Comedy,
Wow.
and that I might buy
Yeah.
because I'm a lover of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I'm also might work on Dante's Inferno. Anyway,
That
uh,
would be cool.
but I was on their site and I saw that they had a course about classic children's fairy tales or classic children's literature.
Yeah.
And I was like, they better have George MacDonald in this
Hmm.
list. And I
Hmm.
didn't see him mentioned once. And I was like, I'm not going to buy that thing.
Yeah.
And they even were going to have, they even had Alice in Wonderland, like
Oh.
almost featured.
Hmm.
And I'm like, dude, he's the dude ripped off his stuff from George MacDonald, and it wasn't even as good as George MacDonald. And everybody
Hmm.
talks about Alice in Wonderland, and
Yeah.
it's not even half as good as almost any of MacDonald's fairy tales.
Yeah.
Like it's almost purposefully meant to be aimless and meaningless,
Yeah.
which Lewis Carroll actually acknowledged. Lewis
Wow.
Carroll was like, yeah, it's kind of meant to be entertainment, which is which has meaning in it, but it's not meant to make kind of rational, logical sense. It's
Hmm.
supposed to be kind of like make sense in your dreams or something. You know what I mean? Like it's meant to be dreamlike and strange in that way. So,
Yeah.
which I guess is an interesting idea, but it's an interesting idea in the sense of like, let's make meaningless art and see what
Yeah.
happens. Was that Dadaism? Is that what Dadaism was?
Hmm.
Basically, it's like, let's make it as meaningless as possible
Yeah.
and see what happens. Throw spaghetti at the wall or something. And that comes later, right? All the modern art nonsense you see. And let's throw spaghetti at the wall. Um, I mean, at least Pollock has a sense of composition, but like so many people, they really literally took it seriously and they're like, I'm just gonna make random nonsense. But that to me was like Lewis Carroll. It was just like, let's go with a story that has meaning, that has characters that you are in, you feel endeared to, and they kind of like symbolize archetypes, right? Because
Yeah.
this is about life now. As soon as you do a lot of those things, it's about life, it's about myth, it's about the undergirding of your society and what it's about, why it's there. And that's George MacDonald.
Yeah.
It's not just C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. But anyway, I could rant about MacDonald all day. Um, but yeah.
Yeah. We have.
So that's the Peking Project. What were you gonna say?
I was going to talk a little bit about fairy tales. We have one called the Blue Fairy Book,
Oh yeah.
which is a collection of fairy tales that this author collected.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I have never read that.
and so I think the idea for that book is that these are classic fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
And and it became popular, and so he made other versions, like he made the red fairy book and the green fairy book.
Oh wow.
Um they're not specifically about a fairy of that color. They just are, fairy tales.
Right,
And
right, right.
Beauty and the Beast was one that I just read, and it was really good. It was really good,
Good.
actually. So it made me wonder if maybe George MacDonald was considered too modern as
Mm,
as a romantic writer. I'm guessing he was one of the romantic writers.
yeah.
Um,
Late 1800s, yeah. But that's
but
most of the famous fairy tale writers were from that period.
well, I wonder though, like if it's collected fairy tales or if it's like if it's original, because his stuff is just original,
Cool.
whereas the Blue Fairy book is just collected fairy tales,
Oh, I
like
see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
like
No,
folk
George
tales.
MacDonald only made original tales. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so who is this blue fairy tale guy who made this collection?
Yeah, we have it on our shelf. Let me see if I can find it.
Gotta find it. What do we got here?
Andrew Lang.
Okay, so he basically just collected his favorite fairy tales. And
Yeah,
you're saying it was before MacDonald?
I think these fairy tales were, yeah,
Wow. What is that like? The the Grimm brothers or something? What is it? What?
some of them are, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Some of
because
them
I
are
do know of the
grim,
Grimms that are obviously before MacDonald, but a lot of fairy tales are from after MacDonald.
and Hans Christian Andersen as
Yes,
well.
that's true. He's the classic, isn't he?
Um, so yeah, they're from all over the world. So, just every culture has these fairy tales and they keep getting told.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess around the 19th century, people were like, hey, since we're all obsessed with chivalry and romance, let's collect
Mm-hmm.
all these fairy tales and put them in a book. And yeah.
Yeah, one thing I think people get wrong about fairy tales is that I actually think that fairy tales can be understood better through the parable. And so when you study parables, which are very short, they're like Aesop's fables and the parables in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
um, you have to then admit that a lot of things in these stories don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is the moral, the lesson of the story, right?
Yeah.
You do often have to put yourself in the shoes of someone, and you often have to relate on a very human level with what's happening in the story, like and relate in a very honest way. So that's what still makes them stories, but they're often just very short, succinct, and to the point. And so when I imagine like a parable in my head, I'm imagining something very simple, like almost no environment, just like these people like in this box with no environment around them. And so
Mm-hmm.
when the moral is then revealed, it's even more just simple. It's like, oh, everything's been made plain, you know? It's not that these people don't exist in a real world. They have to, otherwise their morality wouldn't relate to ours. But but you know, we have to put the highest things as the highest things. And so the moral becomes of highest importance. So when you watch a fairy tale or when you read a fairy tale, you have to understand that there's a moral behind it and that the reveal of that moral becomes the most important aspect of that entire fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost nothing greater importance in a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything else has to serve that moral. And if it doesn't, then people are missing the whole point that, if it's the if in the Chronicles of Narnia you're just obsessed with the place of Narnia, or you're obsessed with some other affectation of that story, you've missed the whole point. Like it really has to be, and the thing about his stories too is each of his stories actually has its own little theme or its own little point to it. And so in a way, the world of Narnia can change to suit the story, right? Because the what matters is that the moral of that particular story. And it's true that yes, that Lewis did make a mostly consistent universe, I think. It's probably not as rich as Tolkien's universe, but it's at least is pretty consistent, right? But I think that he understands probably more than anything anybody besides Tolkien that these are because Tolkien knows what myths are, right? So he explained it to Lewis what myths are, that these stories are about truths, just in enduring truths that are embedded in the in and values that are embedded in that society. And
Yeah.
so myths just bring them out, right, and reveal them in a very delightful, fun, but kind of glorious way, right? They kind of ensconce and beautify or protect those values. And so we have to remember that a fairy tale, while it's not as mythical, it's not necessarily mythical. So it doesn't have the same respect necessarily for a culture's values. It's not so much about that as it is about the moral, which that particular parable, right? Like a parable reveals, a fairy tale reveals a moral. And so that moral has to become of the greatest importance, you know. Another great thing about fairy tales is that you can play with them in a way that's inconsistent with your
Hmm.
other fairy tales. They don't have to be consistent with each other at all. And they're quite often not. In fact, I even think that MacDonald purposefully makes his fairy tales inconsistent because he doesn't want you to think about the universe of that fairy tale land more than you think about the parable and its meaning, right? So he wants you to put the parable above the moral of the story above the universe of fairy tale land or whatever. He doesn't even have a land, right? He doesn't have this like larger legendarium or something, or Narnia, right? He loves each individual story like his own child, right? He knows that each one is unique, each one is special, each one has its own moral, its own power to it. And so you have to take each one individually. And so there's a special kind of love he has for each one of his stories. And he allows them to all be separate, so one doesn't need the other. But some of them do feel like they're in the universe of another at
Mm.
times, you know, like kind of like day girl, boy, night girl feels
Yeah.
like it's in the universe of the Light Princess sometimes. It's just
Yeah.
like it feels like it's in that universe because it has similar characters. And there's
Yeah.
like this witch who's trying to control these children, you
Hmm.
know, and harm them in some way or create some lesson. The Light Princess is more of a lesson. And with the day boy night girl, it's like she's like this evil scientist, like
Hmm.
playing with these children's lives. And so, but so all of them are unique. So I find that really, really fun the way he
Yeah.
does that. But I think that's an important thing to remember about fairy tales is that they're first of all, they're not often connected with each other. So they don't always have a consistent universe. But most of all, what's important is that they should be interpreted like a parable, which is that the moral is of utmost importance, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I love that. That's great.
Yeah. That's cool.
So that's what I call the iceberg project or the peaking project. It's like it's there's hints, right? There's a beginning hint of like there's something here, and then there's something deeper, right, underneath it. So I'm trying to work
I
on those kinds of
I like
projects.
that a lot. My interest is piqued.
Yes, thank you. So with that. So should we get into the meat of the story, the lesson of the blocked guitar. This was
Yes.
literally a dream I had last night.
Okay.
It was, you know how you have these dreams where it's a little scary, and then you have these other dreams where it's like a little bit like you feel very confident and
Mm.
protected, maybe protected by God, or just you feel this sense of safety, right?
Yeah.
Well, this was kind of like in between. Sometimes I felt a little like, oh, that's weird. And sometimes I felt like very confident and protected. And so, but basically, I was in the universe of my dream. I was in this place where there was many people, and I was like a beginning artist among all these other artists, right? And so there was all these other people in the world of my dream. And it's like sometimes we would get together and go to houses and there would be like 50 people in a house. It was just like a big party. We would all just talk and hang out and do stuff. But I always had plans and I was always trying to do stuff, maybe impress some people or whatever. And I was fairly new, so I was trying to make a splash and make some friends, right? It was almost about me making friends in that art community. And which is so interesting that I have a dream like that. But apparently, I found out like halfway through my dream, it's like I've got these two people on my left and right. And this is where I start feeling safe, start feeling a little safer, like I'm protected. And I realized that these two guys are my friends. Like they are trying to protect me and help me. They give me advice, right? And that just felt really, really great to have somebody there next to me giving me what I felt was just really strong advice. It was really cool. And I realized at some point that I had to go and buy a guitar, right? And so, because I was getting into the bass guitar, right? Like my original, in my history of my life, when I first got into the arts, it was, seriously, it was to do music. And so I was really interested in doing that. And that's when we first started dating and everything. So, but like, I wasn't in the bass guitar then. I was into like regular six string guitar and all this stuff. But now I'm more into the bass, even though I haven't really gotten back into music. I'm just kind of like interested from afar to maybe get back into it. And I actually did buy a bass recently, like the cheapest bass I could get, basically. And but I always kind of also liked these full-bodied, um, resonant kind of like guitars, right? And so they're acoustic. They're not necessarily electric guitars. And so I learned that they also had bass guitars that were like that too. They weren't as bassy as like a stand-up bass or an electric, when you put an amplifier on it. They're not as bassy as those, but they're still can be quite nice. I mean, and these beautiful woods and things you can get can also add to that resonance. But like I found this really cool black bass guitar with that was acoustic. It was also electric, but it was acoustic electric. And I thought this is going to be a great bass guitar. This is just perfect. And it was funny. It's like I got this bass, I bought it, and these two guys were like with me, and they were like totally, totally with me on getting this bass. They're like, we're gonna do this thing. And then I go into this place. It's kind of like you go into, remember I was talking about like a house, everybody would hang out in this house, right? Well,
Hmm.
there was this one room that was like, it's like you could purchase, how I purchased this guitar, right? Well, this is a similar kind of room. It's like you can go and purchase a guitar or you can hang out with other artists. And I was just going to go in there to maybe talk to some people, you know. And then there's people there who aren't necessarily all they're cracked up to be. They're not like good people. And so every now and then you get a few bad apples. So, but this guy wasn't necessarily a bad apple. He was just somebody I didn't necessarily trust. right? It's not like he intended, like there was evil in his heart or whatever. Like he's just somebody I didn't trust. Well, more specifically than that, he was a salesman. And he looked at my guitar like it was my new guitar. And he's like, "Oh, you've got it in a case. You shouldn't have it in that case. And if you've had it in that case for very long, it can end up blocking the guitar." Right. That's what he told me. And so then he explained what blocking a guitar means. He's like, there's this term, you probably don't know it, right? I'm a salesman. You wouldn't know these things, right? But when you block a guitar, it basically makes it to where it doesn't play as good as it should, right? Or it doesn't play at all. It doesn't play very well, basically, is the main idea. And this is because it's been blocked for too long. The guitar has basically been damaged by this case. And so I thought that was curious. And it wasn't about what he told me. Well, it was about that to some degree. To me, I was suspicious of him. And it immediately kind of like confirmed my suspicions of him because that didn't sound right to me. I was like, I don't know about this. And so it's like I had a moment of to confer with my friend, right? Like I have these two friends helping me. And I had a moment to confer with one of them or have a little aside with him. And it was kind of like he was telling me, he's a salesman. Don't you understand? He wants to sell you something else. And the only way he can tell you something else is if he invalidates what you have,
Yeah.
right? And the reason that he has these terms that you don't know about is because they're made up, right? So this term block guitar is a symbol of something, right? So after I woke up from my dream, I got to tell him off in my dream. But after I woke up in my dream, it's like I realized that there was a meaning to this dream. And the dream has to do with how we relate to those around us as artists, right? If you're an artist and you don't believe in yourself, right? You don't have a guy on your right and a guy on your left giving you good advice, right? Protecting you from bad advice in the arts, in the world of the arts. You can be taken for a ride and told not just, hey, buy my guitar. You can be told that what you have is not good enough, right? That what you've done is made a mistake. You've blocked your guitar. You've made it to where your guitar, your instrument, your ability to make art is just not good anymore. You've been
Yeah.
hiding it in the closet too long.
Mm.
It's not going to work.
Yep.
All blocked up in there. It's
Hmm.
not that guitar can't just I'm sorry, I know guitars. You don't know guitars. These guitars, they need to be free and they need to be used every day. And if they're not used every day, it's going to be destroyed. And you're not going to be able to come out and play guitar or do whatever your heart can wants to do because you made a mistake. And now you instead of using that guitar, you're going to have to go my route and do this other thing. So that just made me realize that there's lots of other artists, not just people like me in my dream, right? I'm experiencing this in my dream. I'm realizing that there's so many other artists who've been told by some quote expert salesman, right? Oh, you need this tool and you don't have it, so you can't make art. Or they've been told, oh, you sat on this art for too long, it will not work anymore, right? It's
Hmm.
not like riding a bike, guys.
Hmm.
Can't do it. And you got the wrong one. You shouldn't have got that one. Like if you'd only gotten an electric, you wouldn't have a blocked guitar now, right? And so the lesson of the block guitar is that if you listen to bad advice, it will block your guitar.
Mm.
And if you don't listen to bad advice, you can be as free and wonderful as you uh believe as you can be, right? Because you believe that that guitar can be useful. I mean, imagine the great guitarists who left a guitar in their closet that they were told it's not a good guitar, and so they didn't play it and they didn't try to work it and they didn't try to do something with it. But then there's another guitarist down the street that has a broken guitar. I mean, it's legit broken, and it doesn't stop them. They're going to play on that guitar anyway,
Yeah.
right? And they're going to learn what they can learn with a broken guitar, and you can still learn a lot with a broken guitar.
Yeah.
You really can. I mean, it depends on how it's broken, but if the whole neck's broken off, sure. But like, what does a block guitar even mean? Like the acoustic side of it is not resonating as well. Is this a humidity thing? Like what are they really so concerned about?
Mhm.
Right? So change the strings. You can do a lot with a guitar if you just change the strings. But like, this is like this should not be a legit comment by anybody.
Yeah.
And the fact that this guy was the salesman was the real clincher, wasn't it? It was really somebody who has in their best interest to delegitimize you
Mm.
so that you will give them money,
Hmm.
right? And so this quote authority wants to come in and tell you, you're not the authority on this. If you pay me, I will give you some of my knowledge and you can have a new guitar and then
Yeah.
everything will be great then. If you just listen to
Yeah.
me, right? So in some ways, this is kind of an easy lesson, but in other ways, it's kind of like, oh, imagine if I hadn't had those two guys, right? To give me a little bit of confidence to go, you know what? The feeling I'm getting is legit. This guy, what is this block guitar thing anyway? And is this something he just came up with to take me off my balance, right? Take my mojo off so that I'm not like, I'm going to play this bass guitar with confidence. Like it doesn't matter to me if there's a scratch on it or there's a broken string or whatever else it is, right? So this is kind of an important lesson for a lot of people because it's not even just about a broken guitar, right? It's about a sense of self-worth as an artist,
Yeah.
your sense of um, your relevance, um, your power as an artist. What can you do with that?
Yeah.
And someone's always going to be coming along going, buy my product. In order for me to sell you my product, I've got to give you a lack of confidence in yourself,
Hmm.
right? And throw a wrench in your works so you'll buy my product.
Yeah.
And so don't take it personal because a lot of those people are just selling something. They want to make a living, but they don't realize that they're tearing other people down in order to make a living. And that's not cool. That's not
Hmm.
cool to do that. So when we tear people down, to make a few bucks, that's really cruel.
Yeah.
And a lot of people they need that little extra bump of confidence, so be the extra bump that people need instead of, be one of those people that supports an artist,
Yeah.
right? Instead of being the person who's trying to sell something.
Yeah.
and give yourself an ego boost above somebody else. I wasn't trying to mess someone else's day up in my dream. I was just happy to have a guitar and two friends, right? And so, you know, thankfully in my dream, the guy told me to tell him off, and I did. And so I still have my guitar in my dream. I didn't give it up. So,
Awesome.
yeah, that's the basic storyline. That's basically what it's about. It's a little lesson, I guess. Not a big deal, but
Well, yeah, because when you're trying to make a message with meaning, you're gonna get someone that's trying to shut you down. You're gonna get like I don't want to be too supernatural, but you're gonna like alert evil forces that are gonna want to say that are gonna want to discourage you and and
yeah,
tell you that your guitar is blocked and tell you that you're
just whatever
um
lie. Yeah.
any lie,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe you missed your chance or whatever. Like there's all kinds of lies, like I feel like there should be a book like Lies Artists Believe.
Yeah.
um that we can shut those down and see them for what they are,
Yeah.
as lies, and realize that we're creative beings made to create. And so anything that would try to tell us otherwise is going to be a lie.
Yeah.
And to just keep moving forward. Just keep creating. You have the Holy Spirit in you who naturally wants to create, who's naturally creative, hovering over the waters,
Mhm.
breathing life into the void of nothingness to
Mhm.
create
Yeah. Amen.
a 7-day art love festival of creation.
Mm-hmm.
That's who lives inside of you, that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So any voice that's telling you there's something wrong with your art and you can't make it and you can't do it, that's not the voice to listen to.
Right.
Amen.
Yeah. And one of the things that struck me about it afterwards was the idea that this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's
Mm,
like if I believe this salesman, the guitar becomes blocked. And if
yeah,
I don't believe them, then the guitar is miraculously unblocked,
yeah,
right? The
yep,
truth is it was never blocked, but it becomes miraculous, doesn't it, when we don't listen to these doomsayers and doubters and discouragers, right? Because sometimes that has to become miraculous because these people can be very influential in our lives. And especially if it's a friend or someone you love, their words can cut deep.
mm-hmm,
And so, it's not to say we shouldn't love these people.
mm-hmm,
That's the temptation to respond in that way. But it's to say that our relationship with God is more important.
yeah,
And he doesn't do that.
right,
So he builds in you these desires to create.
yeah,
So and you don't even need a guitar to create. You can, but what you really don't need is a bunch of bad advice
mm-hmm,
and a bunch of people naysaying and telling, living in fear and living in a predatory manner, trying to tear down other people.
mm,
So, avoid those people and get those two friends to help you out on either side of you who are supporting you.
yeah,
So thank God for them. But we
amen.
love those supporters and we like to support artists. Um, one of my projects, Media Moses, is all about that. It's about supporting artists and providing a place to promote those artists' works. And so that's what we do there. But yeah, like today I finally put out, speaking of Media Moses, I finally put out my monthly address, which was supposed to be put out beginning of September. And we've just been so busy having so much fun and being just so busy doing stuff that it took me this long. It took me 3 days to write that single article. My goodness. But yeah, so that's the lesson for today. Some fairy tale stuff, some iceberg peaking projects, whatever the heck that means. Now you know what it means. And unblocked guitars is what we're talking about. Unblocking those guitars. You're
Yeah.
free. So any other thoughts, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I just think like any artist that's watching, any creative person that's watching, I just pray that like any boundary, any blockage would just be removed so you wouldn't feel any hesitation in creating
Hmm.
and you would just go with the flow of the creative God that dwells in you.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. And we hope to do to finish our Exodus lesson next week. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that because we got about halfway through the story and we want to get a little bit more into the Exodus story because basically Exodus is like the book of Exodus, but then there's Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, right? And that's when the law is more written. And so we're going to talk about that too and why Moses didn't make it into the promised land and some stuff like that. You're not supposed to hit the rock, my friends. So, all right. Well, we love you guys and stand up for the culture. That's right. So, where can people find you, Rebecca?
You can find me at Rebecca Croft on Facebook and or no, sorry. Yeah, oh, goodness gracious. Rebecca
Should we not do the the where can you find you thing anymore? Is that just people by now should know? Okay, you should know already, guys. Anybody not know? No. Okay.
I'm trying to write on Substack more, and I'm not so sure about Facebook and Instagram,
Yeah.
but a few weeks ago I put up a video on YouTube that turned out pretty nice. And if you want to
Oh,
watch that,
good.
you can, and it's Rebecca Loves Jesus
On
on
YouTube.
YouTube.
Good. All right. So yes, I'm also on YouTube as Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft. I am also on Media Moses, the Media Moses on YouTube, but I don't really have much on there yet. I'm on X at the Media Moses and at Cultural Warfare with, or no, wait. On X, I'm at John Edward Croft. That's right. And and I'm also on Instagram at John Edward Croft, stuff like that. But yeah, most of my writing you can find on MediaMoses.com. So
Yes.
stand up for the culture. And we'll see you next week, guys. All right,
Good
bye.
night.